Senator Gatti, you also have Senate Bill 198, prohibits BESE from granting Type 2 charters in certain school districts. When you're ready, Senator Gatti, you may proceed.
Well, I've prepared an opening. I think I'll switch it to a eulogy, if the chairman doesn't mind, as we move forward here. So I appreciate your allowing me to discuss this bill with the committee. This is Senate Bill 198. For the record, my name is Senator Ryan Gatti from District 36 in Bossier, Webster, Claiborne, and Bienville. As we talked about earlier, the charter school system is growing in our state. We want to encourage that growth, but we also have to look back at the reason that we did this. And there's many people in the room who helped build the DNA of what we call the charter schools, and the charter schools have evolved over time. What this bill does is the current state of the law is if a school district votes against having a Type 2 charter school within their district, BESE can override that, and they could say, you know, you're going to allow the school to happen. And in most districts, we go back and look at, well, this is a failing district, or this is a D district. This meets one of the two criteria that we all kind of agree on is the general principle behind the charter school system, which is they need to be in high-risk areas where the public school is failing, and we can do it cheaper with the charter school system because they're not bound by all the traditional cost, procedures, and curriculum of the traditional school system, and that's the argument. Well, what we have is we have some systems that are traditional systems that are AB systems, and they're doing a good job. And they're working with all socioeconomics, and they're working with special needs children, and they're maintaining well above a passing grade, well above that, well above a D, well above a C, B and A range. And so what this bill would do is that if a charter school would like to move into a B district, C district, and they decide to start negotiations with the school board, and the school board can say yes or no. If they say yes, then the charter school proceeds. If they say no, then that decision cannot be overridden. And it goes back to those general principles that we want to make sure that we are sticking by the founding principles, which are, Senator Milkovich, that we can do it cheaper, and we want to help those high-risk areas. And so, without giving a history of the charter school system and the proliferation of it in areas that were high risk, and the awesome job charter schools are doing in D and F areas, they've really come in and been a saving grace to those areas. If we start this migration into an area where the school board's doing a great job, the school board's making A and B, so we don't fit that first criteria of, number one, this is a high-risk area. You need us to come in and save you. In an AB district, there's really not a need. Secondly, we can no longer really say, well, the charter school can do it cheaper than the district school, because we've just heard a lot of testimony about MFP is critical to both the charter school, and MFP is critical to the traditional public school. So
My remarks are brief.
at this time, I would take any questions. Seeing no questions, I'll move for favorable. No? Okay.
And Senator Milkovich has a question.
Yes, sir.
Once again, Senator Gatti, thank you so much for what you're interjecting into the discussions about the role of the public and traditional local school board educational assets and our charter schools. I will say this. What I liked about the last bill is it acknowledged the important role of charters, and it emphasized choice, but it did say, look, can we get some economies of scale, or can we ask for some reduction in costs from the charter schools. I like that because I felt like that was a balance. I thank you and commend you for bringing this particular instrument as well, but I will say in passing, this one strikes me as a little bit different. This one, it seems like it's not just asking for charter schools maybe take a little bit of a cut because they're not having to bear the community burden, as one of the witnesses said, of teacher pension indebtedness. This one seems to be restricting choice, which I think is important to all of us. So I want to commend you, but just comment on the record that I'm a little bit more, have a little bit more apprehension about this bill because it seems like it's restricting choice. But thank you again for your diligent efforts.
Well,
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
thank you. And just
Thanks.
to comment on Senator Milkovich's statement, once again, I mean, these are passing schools. They're doing everything we're asking them to do. Okay, they're taking the MFP. They're paying their retirement out of it. They're making sure their 15,000 or 22,000 students are doing everything they're supposed to do. And when the state goes in and looks at them, they give them a passing grade. All right, and if we go back, the charter school system was designed to say, hey, this is an FD situation or a DF situation. We need something outside of the current structure of the traditional school system to come in and make these children have a chance to succeed. So thank you for your comments.
Thank you, Senator Appel.
Good morning.
Good morning,
Sorry I
sir.
missed your earlier bills.
I'm not sorry that you
You're
weren't
not
here.
sorry? Okay. Well, I'm gonna rephrase a few of my questions.
No, sir, that's fine.
I was gonna be nice, but no.
Thank you.
Are you aware of how many charter systems, school districts are rated A, B, C?
You know, I have the data in,
I have it.
in an Excel spreadsheet.
I can give you a leading question if you'd like, because
Yes.
you're a lawyer.
Well,
It's 60 out of 69.
60 out of 69. Very good.
So, I mean, you'd be allowing charters in only 9 districts in Louisiana under this proposal. Number two, and this is one that has always bothered me, and we did make some progress since I've been here, but are you aware of the grading scale in Louisiana? Do you know when you see a school that might have a 50, do you know what that represents?
You mean the percentage grade under the letter grade on the report
yeah.
card, or
Yeah, when you hear about somebody getting a 50 in Louisiana and they say, well, that's not so good, but it's not so bad. Are you aware that that's out of 150 points?
right? It's not a 100-point grading
It's
scale.
not a 100-point grading scale. So when you go to compare a Louisiana school, like an A or a B even, to a school in Ohio or Massachusetts or somewhere else where they might use a 100-point scale, we may not have, on a national or international basis, schools at that level. Is that a fair? I mean, do you believe that's true? So
Yeah, I mean we always use different grading scales in Louisiana.
yeah, when I started here, it was on a 200-point scale.
Well.
At least we got it to a 100-point scale because it was really, really bad. You do know that just because a district has a C rating doesn't mean that it may not have D and F schools, or that a school may not have a whole flock of D and F or kids in it. So just because a district has a really good score doesn't mean there aren't pockets of really bad schools or really, unfortunately, students that aren't successful in those districts. And don't you think this is taking away an option for those kids that they would otherwise have if they weren't in one of those 9 districts?
Well, if the charter school, when the charter school comes into a B district, they're not just taking kids from a failing school.
Right.
They're taking kids from the A+ school, the C school,
Correct.
the D school, and the B school.
Yeah, but even in those A schools, you might have F kids, D kids that aren't doing so well, and they might thrive in a different school environment that wouldn't available to them. I mean, isn't that possible to?
Well, and that's what I'm saying. We have evolved to that. But the original process was this whole area, this whole school district is an F. All right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's get some charter schools in there. Let's get some boots on the ground. Let's turn this thing around. And it has worked. It works. But if you take a...
I think we did a lot more than just put some charter schools to make it
I understand.
work. But fair enough.
Well,
go ahead.
My concern is that you have a or a B district that is doing all they can to maintain that. And then you say, because you have a failing school down here in South Cattlegate Parish, all right, we're going to come in, now we can come in and override your veto of the charter school.
I understand that argument.
And so what we're really saying now is we're no longer concerned with the whole district that fails. We're going to come into a precinct, a school district, an area, and say, because of this blemish in your parish, we can get kids from your whole parish and work through it that way.
I'm not sure that's exactly why charter schools are move into a district. Let me give you a quick example, and then I'm going to defer to other folks. I come from Jefferson Parish. We're a B district. We have one of the strongest, most dynamic, growing charter schools in the state in Jefferson Parish. It's one that was set up it basically came out of a desire by the business community to have a school that was kind of tailored toward medical professions, but it has grown and grown and grown. Now they want to expand into high school. And yet we're a B district. We couldn't have that school under your bill because we're a B district.
But with that school, your school board wanted that school there.
No.
They didn't?
Sorry. Oh, no. And our new school board absolutely wouldn't want it there.
That was kind of a leading question, too. I'm
So
sorry.
I know. But the point is that there are a lot of reasons charter schools open in areas that may have absolutely nothing to do with the school's school performance score, district performance score. And it's when you limit that choice for parents, you take away an option that we as public servants have promised them for the last 10, 20 years. And so it becomes very difficult on us to say, oh, we're going to change our mind, and only 9 districts in this whole state will be eligible to have charter schools. And
Well,
so that's
and I
it's an
think
issue.
I think this clarifies a lot of our leaders in the public school systems, maybe in the Northwest, who are under the impression that charter schools are for at-risk areas. And now we've clarified that. We're saying, look, this is really for any area of the state, regardless of how well you do on your grades parish-wide, regardless of how you're doing in your school district, we're going to allow choice in those areas.
That is
so we're kind of getting away from at risk.
Well, I don't know if we were ever. I know you're saying at risk was a driving factor. In my mind, I've been here 8 years. It was never the driving factor for charter schools. It was parental choice. Now, at risk has a certain major element of that.
Well, and we don't have.
We had a balanced plan, and it was based on really 3 items. One was high standards, one was parental choice, and one was having a good structure of accountability. And that goes back since I started on this committee.
Right.
And by doing what you would want to do, you'd be kind of limiting dramatically the parental choice leg of that tripod. Does that make sense to you? I'm not trying to. I know you're bringing this, in good intentions.
Sure. I mean,
but in my mind, it flies in the face of something that kind of a set of principles that we had established over the last 8 years or so.
Well, and I can see that the other side of that coin would be if you have an A/B district and you're working on the problems and you're moving those children at the bottom up,
Right.
and you're spending time, talent, and treasure on it from your local community, and then someone can come in and get more of the MFP than you and take that same child. But once again, these bills are interlaced because it is going to cause some concern down the road on a lot of areas. And I know we've already kind of agreed ahead of time that's okay if that concern is there. But as we address these issues, it's important to be able to tell our superintendents, the 69 of them in different school districts, that, hey, just because you do an A/B, that doesn't mean you're not exempt from having a charter come in. And that's a scary change to a lot of people who work really hard in our school system to maintain A's and B's.
You're a very good advocate.
And I understand parent choice. I have 4 daughters, and I understand completely. I have teachers in my family that are retired and active duty, so I understand completely what those concerns are with and I also understand the value of the charter school system. This is a line that's being crossed, and a lot of the high-performing public school districts are looking at this and they're scratching their head and saying, do you mean we're AB? We're bending over backwards for all socioeconomics, all the different kids in our community. We're doing everything we can, and someone can come cull out or take some of our kids, and they get more of the MFP than we get after deductions. And so,
I think you
so
got
that's
to
a concern.
bifurcate the money side from the choice side. That's, yeah.
Correct.
But let me just for real quick, and then I'm going to stop talking. But somebody just texted me the 9 districts that would be eligible. It'd be Avoyelles, East Carroll, Madison, Morehouse, Richland, St. Helena, Tensas, Union, and Bogalusa. That would be the only districts that could have a charter school under your proposal, just for the sake of the record. I'm just going to stop there because
Yes,
there's
sir.
other folks that probably want to.
Thank you, Senator Pell.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Pell. Senator Mizell for a question.
Just to clarify, this includes C districts. What you're looking at would be A, B, or C.
Yes.
Okay. Because last night when I'm looking at this, and it was late, and I neglected to bring my notes, but I looked up a C school, because when you talk about districts.
You can use my notes.
No, that's all right. I looked up a C school in my district, where there is no charter in that parish. We have one in Bogalusa, but this was
Correct.
with Washington Parish. It was rated a C school, but the students' scores were from 63 to 69. The school score was 83.5. So you have a child that, they're in the framework of 63 to 69, even though the school is a C. And I believe the parent at a school that feels great about being a C should have the choice if there's one available to them. So that to me, that's where we are kind of misled.
Well,
about them.
and I think this is a unique dynamic that happens when that child leaves and goes to a charter school. The child goes to this charter school, and if it can be fixed with more time, or the different processes of a charter school, whether it's brick and mortar or online, then you'll see that the child's grades creep up, or at least they'll have more self-worth and value in the process that they're going through at the charter school. But sometimes their grades are the same. So we track as
You mean the school's grades? Or
no,
the students' grades?
the students' performance.
Right.
Thank you, Senator Milkovich. The student's performance, it doesn't. There's not a statistical differentiation in change, but they feel better about being in the charter school. So,
And why is that? Why do you think that?
well, from the kids I know that are in charter schools, they were either bullied, or they're a gymnast, or they're on Broadway, and there's so much pressure in public schools that maybe they have the personality that they feel pressured in doing that, and there's so many great reasons that kids go to charter schools, but once again, this is trying to tackle a different issue, which is we hold our public schools to a very high accountable. I mean, every molecule in the classroom is looked at. And you have some that are magic, and you have some that are tragic. All right? We all agree the ones that are really a tragedy for the kids as a whole system need to be pulled through, because there's a high likelihood in a F district, whatever scale we use, there's a high likelihood that there's kids with the potential to overperform or outperform their peers. They're not, because the environment is wrong. The environment is the ceiling that their IQ will never be known, because they're not being challenged, or the teacher-student ratio is too high, one of those things. But when you look into a district that's AB,
C.
ABC, they're working hard, they're meeting the needs, there's a good chance that the child in that district has the resources to do well. But there's another issue that is keeping that child from doing well that is outside the control of the teacher or the school board. So while I agree that if every child in the classroom, every child in the district is DNF, we need to really focus our charter schools in those areas. But when you have a school with kids that are a district where you have national merit scholars, you have kids making 36s on their ACT, you're showing kids that were at the bottom because of their socioeconomics in kindergarten, and you're bringing them up to CB students by the time they're in 8th grade. Those districts are doing what we want them to do.
That's
Those
what
public-
we want all the districts to do.
Exactly. And so
That's
those
what we want.
districts.
But to say that a parent shouldn't deserve a choice, especially in a C school, when there are, the general scores of the students are not what we would consider a C. I mean, there's concerns within a C school that I think justify a parent looking elsewhere.
Well, I mean, then let's draw the line somewhere else. We could use a number or a letter grade. I mean, where do we go? Do we say B minus, 92.7, 92.3, or do we say, look, we just want to give everyone a choice? And I know that's where you stand on it, but at some point, but at some point we have to say, what does this do to the morale of our public school system when they're working their tail off? They're the one passing these taxes. I don't think charter schools have the taxing authority.
Do you know what you make me think of? Before I ran, I would meet senators who were offended that they had somebody running against them.
Mm-hmm.
And they had worked really hard. They thought they did a good job. How dare someone decide to run against me? That's the discussion we're having, but we're talking about children not having a choice in the schools. That our job is to do a really good job, period. Not so that we don't get an opposition. And I think that's the point. The schools are supposed to do a good job.
And they are. A lot of them are.
Right, and I commend them. I mean,
mean,
I have
we
great
just-
public schools in my area,
We just read that 60 of them are doing better than average.
but it doesn't forbid someone saying, I think I've got a better way. And we can't say, oh, we're not going to allow, you're not allowed to have a better way because we've isolated ourselves. I appreciate it. I really do, Ryan.
Thank you, Senator Mizell. I appreciate you too.
Thank you, Senator Mizell. Members, the board is clear. We have cards in support. Who do wish to speak? Debbie Moe with the Louisiana Association of Educators, Darnell Washington, Louisiana Federation of Teachers, Kathleen Espinoza with the Power of Public Education in Lafayette. If you can come to the table, please. Members, we also have numerous cards in support, which I will not read into the record, but they will become part of the record. Let's see, Ms. Moe, Mr. Washington, are you here? Sorry that Mr. Richard, you may take, Mr. Scott Richard with the School Boards Association. Go ahead, Ms. Espinosa.
No,
I'm sorry.
You want me to go first?
Yes, go
Okay,
ahead.
sure. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Kathleen Espinoza. I am a mother of 4 girls in the Lafayette Parish Public School System. So Lafayette Parish has 5 charter schools that were authorized in 2013. They were Type 2 charter schools. The applications went to the Lafayette Parish School Board as a Type 1 charter application. By a supermajority of the school board, they were denied, and so they were authorized on appeal by BESE. 3 of the schools are currently in operation. 1 school is set to be constructed next year. A 5th school has the construction started, but it was halted. Within 2 years, it was halted because of the poor performance record of the education management organization, the National Heritage Academies. So at the time, when the school board was considering the application, it was pretty clear. There was evidence of poor performance of the National Heritage Academy schools, the other schools in Louisiana. I believe this was something that the school board at the time considered. I believe that the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education largely ignored the performance record, but found that within a year, by law, they could not allow the company to open a second school in Lafayette. A second situation that came up with the other education management organization was Charter Schools USA, where at the time that they were applying as a Type 1 charter, they made the intention, they expressed their intention to locate the schools in 2 planned residential developments on opposite ends of the parish. They were not going to provide transportation. And so it was in part of the deliberation, the discussion as a community, it was pretty apparent that the school was going to have trouble meeting its contractual obligation to have a certain percentage of at-risk children enrolled in the school. And so there is, I think it was discussed here earlier, there is a legal obligation on the part of charter schools in Louisiana to meet an at-risk enrollment population. In the case of Lafayette Parish, that contractual obligation was 66.7%. As has panned out in Lafayette Parish, one of these schools, the charter school, is the most affluent in our parish. So this has become a problem. And we brought this to the attention of the Department of Education. They have ignored us. They have not. They have indicated no intent for the school to meet the contractual obligation of 66.7% of an at-risk enrollment. So this becomes a problem, and I should say, this was discussed by our school board when they were considering the application. Another issue that's come up that I think has been discussed with the UAL, the issue of the UAL, is that, here you have a school with, like I said, the most affluent in the parish, which is essentially getting a windfall of MFP dollars because they are not providing transportation, which means they're not paying for it. They're not meeting their obligation to the UAL. So we have a school here where we're paying a premium to an affluent school, and meanwhile, the rest of the 30,000 children in the Lafayette Parish school system are shouldering the burden of this relationship. Our CFO, the Lafayette Parish school system, has outlined for us the financial impact of the charter schools in Lafayette Parish. And consistently over the past 3 years, there's been an $8 to $10 million financial impact to the system because of these charter schools in Lafayette Parish. He estimates, and he's pretty confident, it seems, in his estimation, that there is a 25% cost reduction per pupil because of the movement of these children to the charter schools, which means that a child will come, when you have, say, the 1,500 students that have chosen, that have opted to attend a charter school, they might leave, 2 students from this classroom, 3 students from a classroom at another school. So it's not like we can turn off the electricity somewhere, or it's not like we can lose a teacher in another situation. So this becomes an additional financial burden that the 30,000 children in the Lafayette Parish school system must meet. I do want to say this, it's unfortunate that we have, this idea of pro-charter advocates or charter opponents. I see people wearing buttons, I support charter schools. I think I support schools. We really, I think we're at a point now where we understand that charter schools are here, that there is obviously a value to the idea of parental choice. But I think what we're asking you is to negotiate an effective path so that these two systems can live together, right? That we can coexist and that everybody is supported, that we can support schools. The idea of a competition, it's hard to imagine a true competitive scenario where the existing provider is being forced to pay the entire operating cost of its competitor. That's just not the way competition works, and I think we need to keep that in mind. So, having said this, there is one last point I'd like to make with respect to the idea of A, B, and C school districts. Lafayette Parish is a B district. When you look at the number of D and F schools in Lafayette Parish today, 2/3 of our charter schools are in fact D and F schools. Only 1/5 of the schools in the Lafayette Parish public school system are D. So I would encourage you to vote favorably to consider these points that I've made. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Espinoza. Ms. Moe.
Debbie Moe, representing the Louisiana Association of Educators. Ms. Kathleen Espinoza has pretty much covered most of my points, but let me just say this. Our charter school brothers and sisters here, and that's who they should be, accuse us of trying to engineer their destruction. Actually, it almost feels the opposite from where I'm sitting. And I'm not saying that as an accusatory. We have to figure out how we can play nice. Because if we don't, children lose. We have the majority of Louisiana's children in our traditional public schools. We can't continue as adults to be engaged in turf wars. We have to figure out how we can exist and provide the best services for our kids. The Constitution says that the public school system is the only system that is constitutionally given the right to be the purveyor of education for every single child in Louisiana. And I believe that. I believe that our public school system, even though we have some schools that are doing not so well, so does the charter system, so does the voucher system. But we have siloed education in Louisiana to the point where we have three systems that don't talk to each other, they don't like each other, they don't work with each other. That needs to change. And I'm asking that we look at the possibility of, at least when the districts are doing what the charters would come in and do, that they be allowed to continue without competition in that area. If a charter school can provide something that a district needs, more times than not, districts will look at what they are bringing to the table. And we have district sponsored and district created charter schools. What we can't do, what I would be opposed to as an American citizen and a citizen of Louisiana, is to take public traditional schools and cause their demise. There are so many things about the charter schools that are good, but there are just as many things about the public schools that are good. We've got to figure this out. We've got to make sure that we are providing for children and not for the adults, not for the profit motives. We need to make sure that our money is used for the best interest of the education of our children. I talked about my 4 grandbabies. My 4 grandbabies will be in the public traditional system. I want the best for them, just like charter parents want the best for their kids. We can't engineer the demise of the public system, and I ask you to please, please, take into account what we can do to make sure that public traditional schools are not disadvantaged. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Moe. We appreciate that. Mr. Richard.
Good afternoon, members. Scott Richard, Executive Director of the Louisiana School Boards Association. I've learned in the 3.5 years that I've been working here at the legislature, coming from a local school district, that it's very easy to make words dance and make them mean what you would like for them to mean. So I'm going to give, I'm not an attorney, so I'll give a shot on a lighter note at trying to make words clear today in regards to the law. And anyhow, I'm not an attorney, I can read. I had a very good public school education in St. Landry Parish. Title 17, Section 3972, the Charter Schools Demonstration Preamble, as I understand things. It is the intention of the legislature that the best interests of at-risk pupils shall be the overriding consideration in implementing the provisions of this chapter. It's pretty clearly articulated by this body in its past decisions that the focus of charter schools, again, delves into experimentation, innovation, trying to replicate and invent new ways to teach children, especially at-risk children, which is the focus of the law. That point was belabored yesterday in House Education Committee, if you were aware of Representative Bowie's respective legislation and the debate and dialogue on that. The real issue here is should we allow successful school districts to be trusted to continue to make good decisions, even with regard to charter schools? And if we go into the issues of questioning the validity of the letter grade system in Louisiana, I would advise caution, because the flip side of that coin holds merit as well. The vast majority of our charter schools in Louisiana are C, D, and F schools, and that's based on the current accountability system. And that's not to diminish or criticize. It is what it is. If we're going to use that argument that the charter, if we buy into the validity of the accountability system, which I question as a leader of the School Boards Association, there are lots of issues with the validity in regards to the A, B, C, D, F, and T letter grade system. You know, for our new legislators, we do use the letter grade of T for charter schools that take over failing schools that get a letter grade of T for transition for the first couple of years of operation. So be careful. I would caution that we tread lightly when we start comparing and using the letter grade labeling system to say this is the only indicator of whether or not a school is truly performing and if student achievement is where it needs to be in Louisiana. Another point to make is we have an abundance of choice in Louisiana. What we fail to realize often is that we have several Type 2 charter schools that accept students statewide. Any child from any district can attend a Type 2 charter school. We even have 2 Type 2 virtual charter schools that I was hoping we'd get to have discussion about with Senator Gatti's bill that he deferred just previously. That those kids in anywhere in the state can attend the 2 Type 2 virtual charter schools, which, by the way, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm sure there's department staff that can correct me on this, that I think one is rated a letter grade of C and one is letter grade D. But we do have abundance of choice, and we get to the point in time, which is why we've asked for the dialogue, and we greatly appreciate your attentiveness on this issue, and for all the folks in the room, is do we offer choice at the expense of what? If we go to the choice argument and the choice issue, there's going to be winners and losers. And in a perfect world, all charter schools would be funded like the first Type 8 legacy charter schools are funded, where the state, you guys and ladies, pay the entire amount to educate those children at the expense of no local school board in the state of Louisiana. That would be one alternative. The other alternative, to stop the warfare that is perceived by many and the competition for scarce dollars in a state that needs every penny it can get to educate kids in poverty, would be to do what we talked about earlier. That $756 million that's going out of the MFP to teachers' retirement system is the biggest inhibitor for the local school boards toward the UAL. It takes money to educate kids. And if you look at the MFP, you'll note that the local school districts have contributed disproportionately in regards to the state when it comes to funding education in our state over the last several years. And those are not my numbers. Those numbers are available in the MFP documents on the DOE website. And the disproportionate transfer of money to the charters in a system that was created by this body creates animosity, as some of the earlier speakers said. And if the overall arching goal is to educate at-risk students by charter schools, which is in the law, then hopefully there'll come a day where charter schools are more willing, charter operators, EMOs, education management organizations, charter management organizations are much more open and willing in the 69 school systems across the state to take a look at taking over their failing schools. From a past life as an educator in a district that was referenced earlier, there was a strong effort to get charter management organizations to take over the failing schools, to try something new, to innovate, to experiment so we could replicate and educate all of our kids at a high level. But that reluctance was very obvious. They didn't want to do that. They preferred to purchase very lucrative property in lucrative areas of the district and start their own schools because of the perks and the way things are funded and the funding mechanisms that exist. And for all those reasons, again, I think Ms. Moe hit it on the head. Instead of the animosity that exists, and believe it or not, we do work together, the charter schools around the state, the Charter Schools Association, the School Boards Association. There's got to be a better way to stop the adverse effect of choice on the two entities that are striving to educate our kids at the best level possible in Louisiana. It shouldn't be at the expense of either one of those entities. And for those reasons, this would be a good step in the right direction to allow the opportunity for the issues outlined in Senator Gatti's bill, that we give the successful school districts the chance to continue to make good decisions, even in regards to charter schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Richard. Appreciate it. Thank you to the witnesses. Members, that clears the board. We do have cards in opposition. I believe I have a dozen cards in opposition who wish to speak. If you could, keep it to the point and as quick as possible. It is getting late in the day. Dr. Philip Roseman, Sean Wilson, I'm sorry, Dr. Roseman is with the Shreveport Charter Foundation. Sean Wilson, representing himself, and Stephanie DeSell wish to speak. We also have a stack of cards in opposition, which I will not read into the record, but I sure will become part of the record. There's Stephanie. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, sir. Good morning. My name is Sean Wilson, or good afternoon. My name is Sean Wilson, and this time I come to you representing myself as a citizen. I am a citizen of a resident of Jefferson Parish and have been for all of my life. My daughter, which I can thankfully say today, is a graduating senior out of high school, and I am proud that she has made it this far. We had an opportunity upon my child leaving elementary school to enter into a high school. We had 4 choices of high schools in my parish and in my area. Really, we only had one choice, and that was one high school, and at that time, that high school was rated an F. My child was not able to make it into one of the magnet schools, so our options were few. We had none. Though our district is rated B, we were not one of those schools, or we were not in the area where the schools were rated a B as well. Our school was rated an F. I am saddened that if this bill is passed, that in the situation where a student and a family comes in and says, I want a choice other than what I'm forced to have, and that is something that is considered failing, that my child or other children in the state of Louisiana would not have the same choice. I think just because a district itself has an A, B, or C rating does not mean that every school, every child, in every situation has a choice in something that fits for them. Fit is important, I believe, in every situation. So for those families like mine who made a choice to be in a certain district, in a certain area of town, we all need choice, whether we are in an affluent side of town or in the working class part of town. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Ms. DeSell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Stephanie DeSell with the Council for a Better Louisiana. I just want to make about 3 very important points. One is on the state and local roles. And you as leaders in our state set the policy and charter a course, no pun intended, for education in Louisiana. You have a responsibility to try to ensure as many quality opportunities for as many children as possible and no matter where that child resides. Doesn't matter the neighborhood, the district, the letter grade of the school. That is really the role the state has to play. And plus, of the $9 billion that we spend in K-12 education in this state total, the feds spend about 10% of that, send us about 10%. The state spends almost 60%, and the locals pick up the rest. So you have a financial also interest, compelling interest in making sure that quality education can happen as much as possible. I would say this about this particular bill. There's some specifics. Under this bill, you would deny many charters to exist now for a variety of different reasons. And yes, of course, we want at-risk children who are, not getting the education they need to have a choice. Absolutely. But there are districts like the one we're sitting in that has a dyslexia school. That would be denied as well. So, let's just look at A and B districts just for a second. We're even going to put C districts on the side because C districts bring in a whole nother level. But just in the 40 A and B districts in Louisiana, we have 124 D and F schools. 124 D and F schools. The problem goes even deeper. In those same A and B districts, we have another 201 C schools. Now, C schools on the surface kind of sound like, oh, that's moderately okay, it's average, but it's not. Many, many children in C schools are not being educated at even Louisiana's minimum basic education level. So there are many instances in A and B districts and in C districts where we have children whose parents believe they may not be receiving the level of education. Perhaps they are special needs. Perhaps they're interested in career tech paths and what have you. And it's not all about being bullied or being a gymnast, which I'm not sure what that kind of connotation was about. There is a lot of needs in our state that need to be served, and it's okay to have competition where schools are saying that we want to come together. And by the way, what are charter schools? I mean, I've been to many meetings where I've heard almost the vilification of charter schools. And what are they really? They're teachers and educators and school leaders who have come together with community folks and parents who said, I just want to try something different and better for these kids. That's all it is. Just like every other thing we attempt, some do better than others. But we should not be in the business of trying to curtail choice and curtail people's desires to do something better for kids in the state. And the state's role should not be about limiting those choices. So I thank you for allowing me to speak today, and I ask you to please defeat this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Sell. Dr. Roseman.
I'm Dr. Roseman from Shreveport. Let me say first, I support the whole of public education. I've created 2 nonprofits, one in Northwest Louisiana, one statewide, with the idea of joining business and education leaders together in support of public education. It is the key to the American dream and for individual students and families. With that said, let me tell you why I decided to be involved in a charter school, and it's a relatively personal thing. From the time my son Mark was born, we started reading to him every night. My wife and I, when he got up to about 3 or 4 years old, we would read to him, and he would be able to read back to us. He wasn't reading, he just memorized the book and said it back to us. He went to the first grade. He did, always doing pretty well in first grade. About halfway through the year, someone called us, another parent, and said there was a problem in his class. We didn't really think it seemed like a major deal, so we just let it go. Second year in the school, my son's first teacher went on maternity leave. At 6 weeks, he had a series of 5 other teachers after that. In third grade, we thought everything was going well until we got the national norm test. And on that test, Mark was reading at a first grade level. We had not kept up. We had two middle school girls to deal with, and I guess we weren't paying as much attention as we should have. We knew we needed to do something. So we took Mark out of that school, and we took him to a private school, Southfield School, to a teacher named Miss Aubrey, who in a period of 9 weeks developed a learning plan for my son. And at the end of that 9-week period, at the end of third grade, he was reading at a third grade level. Mark did well in middle school, high school. He eventually graduated with a 4.0 average from Emory University. So everything went out well. But here's the point of the story. I could move my son. I had a choice. I could move him to a new great school middle of the year because I'm a doctor. I make a good living. My child got out of a bad situation. But for me, what about the other children who are not as well off as I was? It's not the same for a family who can't afford a private school or to move. So when the opportunity of a charter school involvement came around, I was ready to be involved. The point of the story, I think, is back to what Senator Appel was alluding to earlier. This is really more about individuals and parents. It's not as much a school district issue, really. Individual families in Louisiana should have options. They should have recourse when their child is bullied in an A district or a D district or an F district. They should have recourse if their parents and students get crossways with teachers and principals, which occasionally happens. And they should have recourse when students are simply not reaching the potential that the parent thinks they should. The grade of the district really doesn't matter. What matters is having alternatives regardless of socioeconomics. That, I think, is what we do with charter schools, and I appreciate all that y'all do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. We appreciate it. Also wishing to speak and in opposition to the bill, Caroline Romer with the Louisiana Association of Charter Schools, Jim Garvey with BESE, and Judge Jean Thibodeau from Lake Charles. Judge Thibodeau. From my hometown, welcome, Judge Thibodeau. Glad to have you here.
Thank you, Caroline Romer, Louisiana Association of Public Charter Schools. I'll try to fly through this. I think it's important that we talk about the reframing of this issue. Throughout the debate, I've heard consistently the term "our students" used when talking about the district's concerns as it relates to charter schools and authorizing. Students don't belong to a district. Students don't belong to a school. Students belong to a family, a parent, a guardian. This issue should be reframed about parental rights to make decisions as close to their children as possible about finding the education program that is tailored to meet the needs of their child. It should also be reframed that it's not about failure. Again, it's about the opportunity to make choices and decisions as close to your child as you possibly can. So yes, the turf war should end. And the turf war shouldn't be any more about our students of the district. It should be about parents and making those rights. On authorizing, I'd point out, districts have the chance to authorize those schools themselves, as we've heard, and when they do so, they're allowed to collect administrative fees, and they also get credit for the scores in that. They keep that school in their portfolio of schools. They keep those students as part of their school's community, and it's unfortunate that too often we see districts acting like this is a competition rather than an opportunity to serve their constituencies with having choice. And finally, we've also heard often in the debate all the things that are encumbering districts. And so they turn around and say, well, they shouldn't have to do it. Well, a couple years ago, Senator Jane Smith from Bossier passed a bill called the Red Tape Waiver Bill. It was an opportunity for any district to petition to get out of what they thought to be bureaucratic, unhelpful parts of the work they were doing. To my knowledge, not a single district has asked for a red tape waiver. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Romer. Judge Thibodeau?
Good afternoon, Chairman Morris and members of the committee. My name is Gene Thibodeau, and I am the president of the Board of Trustees of two charter nonprofit companies which govern three charter schools in Lake Charles. And I want to make clear that I'm appearing here as a private citizen, not as a member of the Third Circuit Court of Appeal. Okay?
I can't help myself, Judge.
I got you.
You've always been Judge Thibodeau to me.
When I appear before here today, I think of Yogi Berra. It's deja vu all over again. I'm testifying against this bill this year. I testified against this bill last year. I testified against this bill the year before. It keeps coming up. But I can give you at least 41,000 reasons why this bill should be rejected. At least 41. There are 41,000 students in underperforming or failing schools in A and B districts. And I'm not even counting the C districts, 41,000. Why? Because there are pockets, as Senator Appel alluded a few minutes ago, there are pockets of low-income, primarily minority areas in all of these various school districts. I read a book last year. I really didn't have to read it because I had experienced what the author was talking about. It's by Professor Robert Putnam. He's a professor at Harvard, and he is the nation's preeminent political scientist. And the book is called Our Kids, The American Dream in Crisis. And in that book, he talks about class inequality and how class inequality impacts communities, families, and schools. And it brings home what is really happening in these various A, B, and C school districts. Let me put some meat on what Senator Appel talked about or mentioned. In Calcasieu Parish, where I live, in Lake Charles, we have 57 schools, okay? 13 of those schools are D and F. 23% of schools are D and F. Calcasieu is a C district. It was a B, it went to a C. We have 16 schools with majority minority populations. I'm just being politically correct. With black population, these are majority black schools, at least 85%. Okay? We have 3 C's, 9 D's, 4 F's. So 13 of those schools where the majority of our black students go, 13 of 16 are D or F, 81% of those schools. The vast majority of our students came from those underperforming or failing schools. We have 2 high schools that are majority black. The vast majority of our kids would attend 1 or 2 of these schools. My former high school, I had a much better education then than I think they're getting now, is a D. 13% of those students are TOPS eligible. The other high school, 21% TOPS eligible. I don't have the current statistics, but in 2012, 2013, 120 students took the ACT exam, the ACT exam, at my old high school. 91 had 0. 91. And that's the school that our kids, our students, would be going to. 79% of the middle or elementary school with majority minority population, 79% are D or F. 4 of them are F, 29%. I mean, it's really morally reprehensible that we in America would tolerate that. We would tolerate that. 30% of our students who live in North Lake Charles take advantage of the majority to minority rule under the desegregation plan. And what is this happening? It's overcrowding the schools in South Lake Charles where the better schools are. The parents have made a decision, and I call them educational refugees. They're educational refugees seeking scholastic asylum in better school areas. they are leaving because of these failing or underperforming schools. They're going to better schools, or they're coming to our schools, our charter schools. And parents know that their children are being educationally underserved, and that's why they're leaving. Let me give you another example. Tangipahoa Whole Parish, our governor's parish, it's a C district. There are 25 elementary and middle schools. 7 are Ds, 1's an F, 32%. 32%. There are 6 high schools. 2 of them are D or F. One is the high school where our governor was a quarterback. So and all of these schools are now our majority minority students. So the governor should be here. This should not be part of his package. He should be here testifying against this bill, not in favor of this bill. We have made attempts to partner with our local school board. We begged them, let's partner, let's do something about this situation. There have been 3 bond elections in 5 years to improve schools or to build new schools. Every last failed. So we went to the school board and said, hey, look, this is what we'll do. You can't pass a bond election. If you approve these 2 applications, we'll build one, we propose, in this area, a high-risk area, and we'll build one wherever you want to. We'll build it with tax-exempt bonds. And when those bonds are paid, we'll give you the school. No. What else can we do? They've got overcrowded schools, and those overcrowded schools are going to be, in Senator Morris knows, because he represents part of Calcasieu Parish, are going to be exacerbated by the economic renaissance that's going on in Calcasieu Parish. It's the economic epicenter of the country. Got $40 billion of industries being built right now. We have $57 million on the books. Billion. And the GO study that was financed by our local citizens said that 6,000 more students will be coming into that area within the next 3 to 4 years. 6,000. Where are they going to go if the parish schools are overcrowded? We offer an alternative to that, but under this bill, we will never be able to get another, I think, charter school in Lake Charles. You know, the school boards here are testifying in favor of this bill. They have a history of rejecting these applications around the state. No, it's like the old turkey Thanksgiving analogy. I've never known a turkey to vote for Thanksgiving. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. You've got A and B schools in C, but depending on which study you look at, we're either number 46 in the country or we're 48. So we're saying, oh, we've got these A, B districts and these C districts that are good districts. But we're 46 in the country, 48. That's like saying I'm the tallest midget in the circus. You're still a midget, you know? And so what we're doing is this. I mean, we want to partner. We are part of the public education system. I'm a product of that system in grades 1 through 12. So we're just trying to make it better. We're trying to make public education what it can and really what it ought to be in this state. And at the end of the day, we want our students, all of our students, our public school students, whether they're in traditional public schools or whether they're in charter schools, to say what Langston Hughes, a great poet and a writer, said a long time ago, and that is, I too sing America.
Thank you, Judge Thibodeau. You have a question for Judge Thibodeau? Senator Appel has a question.
Thank you, Judge. Just out of curiosity, you have 3 schools, is what you said, or 4?
3.
3. What's the success rate in those schools?
We have one, Lake Charles Charter, second year, is C school.
Right.
From the same district, same parents, same street, same
Oh, I was
zip
coming to
code.
that, but keep going.
Okay. Southwest Charter Academy. started as a C, went to a D last year because of the new exams.
Right.
We fully expect those schools to be B and A schools. Charter Schools USA, our management company, has never had a school that's less than a C in 5 years.
And these are mostly minority kids?
85% black, 84% black, whatever, 15% white, and 1% other.
Okay, now
And
I get
80
to ask a judge a leading question.
And 83% free and reduced lunch.
Okay. Is there any reason that you know of, or anything in your mind that says that we are not capable of educating poor and minority kids up to a much higher level than we already do today?
Nothing. I mean, every kid can learn. We've proven that. These kids have come to us from the same background, the same addresses, and they're starving. And they came to us, many of them with discipline problems. We teach character education as part of the curriculum and leadership training. We don't rely on grants for that. That's part of the curriculum. So yes, every kid can learn. And Senator Pell, I feel kind of guilty because several years ago I told my secretary, look, if I get $10 million, I'm going to start a school. But I want a school for the talented 10th. I'm kind of impatient. I don't want to deal with all these other students. I want to create leaders, and then they can get the masses to follow them. And she scolded me for that. She said I was an elitist. And I know that I was wrong then, as I know I am right today.
Yeah. Well, I always argue that, you heard me say before that we had a strategy, we have a strategy, and it's based on a three-legged stool, if you will: accountability, parental choice, and high standards. And it sounds like the schools in your area are fulfilling those three elements to a T, and you're showing substantial results. And that's the message I want to get out, because I can't tell you how many calls I get from people and say, we shouldn't even bother with public schools. We shouldn't even bother because either there's too much poverty in Louisiana, or we have too many minorities, or we have this reason, or we have that reason, and the other reason. There is no reason a kid can't learn. There is no reason that we can't bring this state from 48th in a country that's 15th to 20th in the world in educational outcomes. No reason, except us. And I think that you have spoken very eloquently, and I really do want to tell you I appreciate the words you said, because they're spoken from the heart, and I appreciate everything you're doing. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Senator Appel. Mr. Garvey.
Yes, sir. Jim Garvey, BESE president. I have three main points to make, and I think I can get them in under 3 minutes, maybe under 2 minutes. The first point is that I think we need some more information, some clarification on what we are calling A and B schools. One of the earlier speakers said we should not focus on the letter grades A, B, C, D, or F because they are misleading, and I couldn't agree more. And let me explain to you why. But let me first tell you that these numbers I'm going to give you in themselves will be, while they're clarifying, are themselves misleading. In an A school currently, the average percentage of students scoring basic and above. Basic is what Louisiana has set as describing passing, and I'm going to tell you why that's a misleading title in itself. But the percentage getting basic is 79%. That means that 21% of the students are not even passing the low standard of basic. When I was in school, 79 was not what made an A, but apparently we're saying 79 is an A. It was 92, 94 was an A. For B schools, this is B districts, the average student, the average percentage making basic is 67. In most classes around the state, 67 is an F, not a B. And that's at the basic level. That's point one. Point two is that most of the states around the United States don't use basic as their passing or appropriate level. They use mastery or the equivalent of mastery. For those numbers, in A school, A district, the average percentage of students getting mastery is 40%.
40, and don't think that's reversed, don't think that's 60. That's 40%. It means 60% are not even passing if we were to compare Louisiana students to students in most of the other states. For B schools, it's 28% passing. That's not, I mean, that's off the charts, below an F. So the final point is that even in A and B districts, and I'm not even going to talk about the C districts so that this conversation can apply to two bills here, we don't have to repeat it, there are a lot of students that are not getting served well in even A and B districts. The teachers are working hard. The teachers could be doing a good job, but the results are not getting done. And that's not to say that parents wouldn't choose to keep their children at these schools, but I think what it indicates is that parents should have a choice, even in A and B districts, to have a chance to see if another school might work better for their children. So I would ask you to vote against this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Senator Walsworth, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judge, I just want to say thank you. You've been to this committee several times, and thank you. Not what you say when you come here, but the deeds that you do back home, and how you love the kids in Lake Charles and Calcasieu. And if you want to come on up to North Louisiana, we'd love to have you. So if you want to go ahead and expand it out a little bit, we'd love to have you up there.
Well,
but I just wanted to say thank you.
When I retire, I may do that.
And when may you retire?
Oh.
Long time away, huh? If I know you, you're not ever going to retire.
I like what I do.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Garvey, you had another
If
point?
I could add two quick things. I have sent a copy of the chart that I'm reading from to Senator Appel, so he could pass it out if he would like. And two, I'd like to point out a misconception that a lot of people have, which is that when schools come from C, D, and F, or A and B districts, they appeal to BESE to have their charter reevaluated. BESE ends up turning down more than half of those appeals that come to us. We are not a rubber stamp for charters that appeal to us for approval. We turn down more than we accept. Thank you.
Also in support of, who in opposition but wish to speak, Mr. Eric Hine, Rachel Sadul, and Miss Bridget Nyland. If you can come to the table. John.
Thank you. If you all would state your name for the record, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Eric Hine. I come representing JCFA. JCFA is a non-traditional alternative public charter high school. We currently operate 2 high schools in Jefferson Parish. One is a Type 1 charter school, which means it's authorized by the local school board. One is a Type 2 charter school, which means it is authorized and overseen by BESE, the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education.
And that's an acronym for what?
BESE is...
No, I got BESE. You said CFJ?
Oh, JCFA is just the name of our school. We shortened it. It was really long, and now it's just JCFA.
So you're not telling us what the JCFA stand for?
That's the name of the school. It used to stand for Jefferson Chamber Foundation Academy. However, we no longer go by that name.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. So I just wanted to kind of speak a little bit more specifically, kind of echoing some of the comments you've already heard. In the state of Louisiana, last year there were over 10,000 dropouts throughout the state. If we look at A-B school districts, there were 4,650 dropouts. If we look at A, B, and C school districts, there were 7,765 dropouts. That's 72.55% of these dropouts come from schools in A, B, and C districts, which is a tremendous amount of students that are dropping out. And then if I take it even a step further, I can look at retention rate from grade to grade. In A, B, and C districts, over 25,000 students are retained from grade to grade. And looking at A and B districts, over 17,000 students are retained from grade to grade. Again, a tremendous amount of students. And all of these things are factors which could lead to a student to dropping out of school, which is ultimately a negative impact, not only for that student, their family, but also the community. And these numbers also don't take into account or reflect the private and parochial school system that parents have the choice to enroll their students in should they have the means to do so. So there are students that have been failed by these traditional school systems, A, B, C, D, and F, obviously. These students live and went to schools and districts that the bill considers performing well enough to be above reproach, to be above the choices of parents, to be above innovation, whether that's teaching or hiring practices, management operations, or, as was reflected earlier, benefits for teachers. So if you vote to move this bill out of committee, you vote to perpetuate a status quo. And that status quo that says it's okay that 10,000 students in the state of Louisiana drop out of school every year. And that's in a year that we had record high graduation rates. I urge you to please vote down this bill. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it. Ms. Sadul?
Soodle.
Sadul.
Hi, my name is Rachel Soodle. Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to speak. I don't have a fancy title. I'm a parent. I have 2 children who I put into the charter school for specific reasons that they wanted to explore more science, more math, a little more innovative studies. And that's what the charter schools brought to our family. We were in a private school. We chose to pay for that. Could we afford it? Not really. We sacrificed a lot to have those kids there because the school that was in our district was a lower rated school, and my priority is the education of my children. So to have that charter school as a choice was phenomenal for us. They have flourished there. Would enjoy school. In fact, my daughter was thrilled to death that I was coming here to speak about it because the idea of that school going away would be very upsetting to her. So thank you for allowing us the opportunity. The parents need the choice. They deserve the choice. Our children deserve this choice. And if the charter schools are going to work and allow these children to flourish and develop and be innovators and thinkers, then they should be available. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Nyland?
Thank you, Chairman. Bridget Nealon with Law B. I will be very brief because you've already heard some really powerful testimony on this bill, but I did want to make a couple of points. First of all, congratulations to the higher performing schools, A and B. We realize what a difficult job that is, and it's hard to maintain those grades. But even in an A school, not every child's need in the district will or in that school will necessarily be met. For example, the average ACT score in an A-rated school in Louisiana is 22, which is not even high enough to get into all Louisiana institutions. The state overall is a B. If you apply the same logic contained in this bill, no chartering would be allowed in the state, and that's a state that remains 48th in the nation, even though we have had some impressive growth in recent years. BESE is a responsible authorizer, and we ask you to defer this measure today. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Walsworth, do you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being a parent, and thank you for coming, and I get the choice part. I got a 7-year-old son, and yes, I am too old to have a 7-year-old, but those things just happen. But anyway.
I'm turning your mic off.
I'm just glad that he reminds Conrad of when his son was 7-year-old, I think, or maybe a little bit younger. So anyway, but look, thanks for we don't need the titles. We need parents. So, and thank you for what you do every single day for being a parent.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
And a final card in opposition, Mr. Guilford Brigg with the Foundation for Excellence in Education, and he waives. Members, the board is clear. Senator Gatti, you have the right to close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once again, in closing, we have a situation in our state when we tell from this table that the letter grades aren't right, letter grades don't matter, when in other framing techniques that we use, if a superintendent came up and said, I'm not really sure I like the letter grade system, we tell them, well, that's how we're going to hold you accountable. You know, we're the umpire that gets to pick that arbitrary spot, and then we're going to use an exact 30-foot chain to measure how far you've gone. You know, because the truth of the matter is, and I'll just share this with you, so that Senator Mizell, in my district, we have a B system. We have a lot of good schools to get a B average. And there are C charter schools moving into our district. Some D's, and some F's. And the facts are that 21% of charter schools are at a D, 16% are at a F. And so when we allow charter schools to move into an AB district, we may not be doing all that this. Say it again. I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. So what we have here is we're allowing C schools to move into a AB district. We're allowing F schools to recruit or to ask or to take children who are in a tough situation. Maybe they are that tough situation, Senator Mizell, you were talking about, where they're at that 63% in a B school. So the child in and of itself, you know, regardless of the averages or the means or the medians, that child is struggling. So we're going to take that child, we're going to put them in a school that is 2 letter grades lower than the school that they're in. And we tell the parents, well, you're going to have a choice now. You can do that. Well, once again, I understand the will of the committee, but I do think that we need to look clearly at addressing an issue of whether or not we allow D and F schools to come into A, B, and C districts and somehow frame that as parent choice. But once again, this bill simply looks at one specific issue. We have public school superintendents, public school teachers that work very hard. They work very hard to maintain A, B, and C averages, not just in a school, but in the entire district. And when we tell them, we know you're doing what we asked you to do, we know you're doing above average, we know you're doing what we asked you to do, but because you have a school down here that's underperforming, we're going to override you. And we're going to allow a charter school to come in. But that charter school doesn't have to take the kids that are 63 and below or 72 and below. They can take whichever kids they want to take. They don't have to take the ones that are dragging your average down. They can take whoever they want to take. And that's a wrong message to send to our high-performing independent school districts. But at this time, I would move for favorable passage of the
Thank you. The pleasure of the committee. Senator Walsworth moves that Senate Bill 198 be deferred. I hear no objection. Without objection, Senate Bill 198 will be deferred. Thank you, Senator Gatti, for
Thank you, Mr.
Senator
Chairman.
Gatti Day.
Appreciate y'all.
Thank you, Gatti Day. Senator